Hi guys, welcome back. Today I'll talk about Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor is a US naval base near Honolulu, Hawaii, that was a scene of a devastating surprise attack by Japanese forces on December 7th, 1941. Just before 8 a.m. on that Sunday morning, hundreds of Japanese fighter planes descended on the base, where they managed to destroy or nearly damage 20 American naval vessels, including 8 battleships and over 300 airplanes. More than 2,400 Americans died in this attack, including civilians and another 1,000 people who were wounded. The day after the assault, President Franklin D. Roosevelt asked Congress to declare war on Japan. The attack on Pearl Harbor was a surprise, but Japan and the United States had been edging forward for this war in decades. The United States was particularly unhappy with Japan's increasingly belligerent attitude toward China. The Japanese government believed that the only way to solve its economic and demographic problems was to expand into its neighbor's territory and take over its import market. To this end, Japan declared war on China in 1937, resulting in the Nanking Massacre and other atrocities. American officials responded to this aggression with a battery of economic sanctions and trade embargoes. They reasoned that without access to money and goods, and especially essential supplies like oil, Japan would have to rein in its expansionism. Instead, the sanctions made the Japanese more determined to stand their ground. During months of negotiations between Tokyo and Washington, D.C., neither side would budge. It seemed that war was all but inevitable. Because American military leaders were not expecting attacks so close to home, the naval facilities at Pearl Harbor were relatively undefended. Almost the entire Pacific Fleet was moored around Ford Island in the harbor, and hundreds of airplanes were squeezed onto adjacent airfields. To the Japanese, Pearl Harbor was an irresistibly easy target. The Japanese plan was simple: destroy the Pacific Fleet. That way, the Americans would not be able to fight back as Japan's armed forces spread across the South Pacific. On December 7th, after months of planning and practice, the Japanese launched their attack. At about 8 a.m., Japanese planes filled the sky over Pearl Harbor. Bombs and bullets rained onto the vessels moored below. At 8:10, an 1,800-pound bomb smashed through the deck of the battleship USS Arizona and landed in her forward ammunition magazine. The ship exploded and sank with more than 1,000 men trapped inside. Next, torpedoes pierced the shell of the battleship USS Oklahoma with 400 sailors aboard. Oklahoma lost her balance, rolled onto her side, and slipped underwater. Less than 2 hours later, the surprise attack was over, and every battleship in Pearl Harbor has sustained significant damage. In all, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor crippled or destroyed nearly 20 American ships and more than 300 airplanes. Dry docks and airfields were likewise destroyed. Most importantly, more than 2,000 people died. But the Japanese had failed to cripple the Pacific Fleet. By the 1940s, battleships were no longer the most important naval vessel. Aircraft carriers were, and as it happened, all of the Pacific Fleet's carriers were away from the base on December 7th. Moreover, the Pearl Harbor assault had left the base's most vital onshore facilities intact. As a result, the US Navy was able to rebound relatively quickly from the attack. President Franklin D. Roosevelt addressed a joint session of the US Congress on December 8th, the day after the crushing attack on Pearl Harbor. He went on to say, no matter how long it takes us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory. After the Pearl Harbor attack, and for the first time during years of discussion and debate, the American people were united in their determination to go to war. The Japanese had wanted to goad the United States into an agreement to lift the economic sanctions against them. Instead, they had pushed their adversary into a global conflict and ultimately resulted in Japan's first occupation by a foreign power. On December 8th, Congress approved Roosevelt's declaration of war on Japan. 3 days later, Japan's allies, Germany and Italy, declared war on the United States. For the second time, Congress reciprocated, declaring war on the European powers. More than 2 years after the start of the World War II, the United States entered the conflict. That's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.